What's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebris, and I have a fun one for you folks here today in Nightingale. I'll be showing you folks how to make your own custom planters. This is for the realm walker that wants to blend in some nature and color into their building, but maybe doesn't want just plain old pots and planters sitting around. These are fantastic decorations that are extremely customizable, from how you set the planters up to what plants you choose to grow as decorations and what tile sets you build with. You have a lot of freedom with these DIY planters. So today I'll show you folks how to build this the quick and easy way, and then how you could take these planters to the next level for yourself. If you enjoy the Nightingale content and are still out here loving this game as much as me, maybe consider hitting the thumbs up button. It goes a long way in helping me reach other Nightingale players with my content and does a lot to help my channel grow and just kind of stay afloat here. But either way, thank you very much for all of your support. But now, let's start putting these planters together. First, for the simple setup. For this, you'll want to place a planter on the ground. From here, you could decide on how many planters you want. To fill an entire foundation, we'll take 4 and line each of them up. Then, a very important step. You'll want to plant and water your seeds before moving on to build the rest of your planter. Then, you'll take your foundation of choice and overlay that on top. You can do this in a multitude of ways, but the simplest approach is to place a foundation directly on top of the planters. Provided you have no other foundations nearby, you can place this very simply. Then, that's it. Your planter is essentially complete. Your plants will grow and come through the foundation, giving a rather nice effect. From here, you can choose to decorate your foundation as you'd like. Add some small walls or fences, maybe build a small pavilion, or whatever else you might want to do. This simple approach has a ton of variation, but you can bring things a lot further here in how you approach setting this up. So next, let's talk about how to build more advanced planters as decorations for your builds. Now, something cool that I've been experimenting a lot with lately are multi-layered foundations. If you've seen my latest builds for the recent farms, you've seen a bit of that in application. By using more than one foundation, you can utilize height difference, different tile sets, even angular shapes. It's a very experimental approach of building, but I like it a lot. It opens up a lot of new potential here when building. And one of those things in particular is how you can make these custom planters here. So we'll do what we did originally. Build our planter, add seeds, and water it. But this time, we'll place a starter foundation first. We'll then use a quick and easy method of overlaying our foundations. You'll walk up beside the foundation you're planning to overlay, and there is a point where your foundation will snap off of that original foundation. It's a bit tricky, but the closer you are to that foundation, the better. And as long as you keep that original foundation in your character's line of sight, you can approximate things pretty easily here. Things don't have to be perfectly symmetrical, as the original foundation can be hidden in a few easy ways. Just try to get things mostly right and you're good to go. But the cool thing is how this opens up and what you can do next to decorate the planter. You can use the lower foundation to add a railing in, making this very nice low railing around your plants. Or you can continue the first foundation to make a floor around the planter. Or even use both foundations to build something really elaborate. This has a fantastic effect. Full fences can sometimes kind of obstruct the decoration, so with these partial railings, you can build some very nice looking designs around your base. Next, let's talk about laying out the planter boxes and how to align things nicely in a row. The hard part about cramming a bunch of planters into the same space is accessing them. So when making a row, turn your planters by 2 notches, or as a diamond shape, and then place them in a row. Your plants will grow in that row as you intended, but accessing the planters to plant the seeds and water them is much easier than if you tried to line them up in a solid rectangle. This is useful for making larger and longer planters and pavilions, which you can also combine with the previous method of overlaying foundations to have some really personalized designs here in the game. Then, just as the simple approach, if you've placed your planters along the ground, you can simply just overlay foundations on top. Maybe try to keep things centered for symmetry, and you can then build the rest of your planter design from there. And for our final example on how to set up more advanced planters, let's show how to make a close cluster of planters that are accessible and easy to work with. What we'll do is place our first set of planters how we'd like. For this example, I'm just laying a simple bed of planters. Then we'll take our next planter, or group of planters, and raise them up by a single notch, so that they just barely stand above the last planters. As long as we're keeping at least some of each blueprint out and accessible, then it makes the whole concept much easier to work with. The watering can be a bit touch and go here in the game, so having everything nice and easy to access is the best way to keep these fun and enjoyable to set up. You could do this in either order, either starting with your raised planters or the ones at ground level. But by using height variation, you can make much more elaborate arrays without things becoming too cumbersome. We'll then do the same trick of standing beside our previous foundation at the right place for our next foundation to pop off, but still be close enough to overlay on the previous foundation. This might look difficult, but much like using portals to detach foundations, this becomes really natural and intuitive the more you do it. Then we'll build the rest of our planter. And because we have two foundations to work with in the same spot, we can place things in a much more personalized way, with our fence above ground and pillars to look like support, but our pavilion walls and roof built on the lower foundation to keep the whole structure a little bit more compact and quaint. Now, at this point, you have a ton of customization and choice to use with building your planters, from how you lay out the plants to how you build the structure itself. Now, let's show you all how to make custom plants in the game, so that you could personalize this on every level, winding up with hundreds, if not maybe even thousands of variations that you could use and apply to your builds. First are planter heights. The planter box is the highest, then lower than that is the Pterodomania pot, then the Gertrude pot, and lastly the simple plant pot that's in the Augments tab. The planter box is nice and easy to work with, so we'll show an example with this one first. We'll take my previous micro farm and apply it instead to building here, placing 4 planters all in the same spot. This gives us the ability to place in 4 different plants all in the same space, creating some very unique and even pretty displays of flowers, bushes, and even fibers. Really, the only limit to these are your creativity. You might want to plant a few of your desired plants individually first though, to see how they'll look when all combined. But really, you could just take a random assortment of plants and slap them together and it usually looks pretty good. Then we'll place in our next foundation to cover up the planters, a few fences for decoration, and in less than 10 minutes we wound up with a super unique decoration that we could use for building. The longest process is waiting for the plants to grow most often, so these really are kinda low effort, high reward decorations. And to show how plant pots look when mixed in here, I whipped up just a quick example. You could set these up how you'd like to in blueprints, but to layer them like so, you'll need to place in your planter box first. Then we'll put in seeds and water them. And when placing in our next foundation, we won't have such an easy time as the foundation won't pop up by itself. So for this, we'll need to eyeball our height just a little bit to be sure our foundation is above the planters, but not by so much that it cuts off the plants too early. We'll use the stave railings for this one. I think they look really nice, adding in a splash of bold color alongside the flowers. The pagoda railing is a bit more difficult to work with as it sits on the outer edge of a foundation as opposed to the inner, but even then, just a bit of adjustment and you'd be able to work with them just fine. And for some final advice on how to add these to potentially already made builds, you'll want to remove the foundations in a 2x3 rectangle on one side of where you plan to place your planter or begin it. Remember that when removing stuff from your builds, that it's best to work from the topmost piece down to the bottom to avoid any sort of loss of resources. With just enough space, you can get the previous method of standing beside a foundation to work, but if you find the snapping to be an issue, just remove a few more foundations to give yourself an easier time placing. Then just do as you would normally, placing in the planters you want, then seeding and watering, and then put in the new foundation and decorations, and you've got a custom-made planter in your old base in a pretty easy process. Though these are a bit nicer to build before a build is finalized. I don't have the decoration space for these in my own world, sadly, but in the next few worlds I'm going to be building, I plan to have a bit less crafting stuff so that I can have more room for decorations. So that's that. Pretty easy and a ton of payoff. How to build your own custom planters here in Nightingale. And let me know, do you like these sort of custom decorations? If so, I have a few other ideas that I could try out to see if they wind up nice enough to share. But as we wrap up the video here, I just want to say thank you to you folks for sticking along with me here. I know things have been a little slow for uploads lately, but I'm just biding my time till the time is right to put out an absolute flood of Nightingale content. Until then, each bit of support along the way is greatly appreciated. So please enjoy building your own custom planters here in the game, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.